All right, welcome back. Thanks for joining me again. We're gonna get right into it. So where are we at on the truck? It's actually looking pretty good. I grabbed some red primer and covered up all the bare metal, inside and out. So that's pretty good. The cab is now bolted down, so it is fully to the chassis. Everything's good. All 4 bolts are in. I did have to pull the gauges out so I could get the bolts out for the steering and get those taken care of and get them in. Engine wise, I got this thing pretty much mocked up. So we got the headers back on, power steering pump, intake, all that stuff's back on it right now. And that's fine and dandy. I needed all that stuff on so I can make sure I get all the steering in the right spot. Intake not so much, but the rest of it, yes. So working on the steering here, that's what we're going to start with. You can see one of the U-joints there. I got the steering shaft laid out here. I pulled that apart right now. My GoPro's acting up on me here. So here is the main column. Okay, so I cut the wiring off of there. Like I said, I took the steering wheel and shaft out. What we're going to use for a kit is this Performance Online kit that comes with a collar that goes in the end of the tube here. You weld that in, and that allows this bearing to go in there. And then the bearing rides right there on the double D. And then you have a collar on the end to lock it in so the column doesn't pull out. All right. This is an adapter that goes from 3/4 inch shaft to a double D shaft. So when you cut this down to the right length, you stick this on here and weld it on, and then you can throw this back in the column, slide the bearing on the end, and then lock it in with a collar. I've used this kit before, and it's actually a pretty good kit. This time around, it looks like the shaft in here, the welded seam tube here, is not deburred, so I'm gonna have to deburr that so I can actually get it over that shaft. So we got 2 things that are not going for us right at the moment. First thing, this is too long. And when I try to stick it through so I can mark the placement on a firewall, so I know where to cut it, because I want to be as close as I can for as much room as I can, it hits the header. Which, fine, great. I don't feel like pulling the header off. So luckily, if you look close here, you can see where the gasket was, which is perfect. So we'll just go ahead and cut it like right about there, somewhere in that area, and then get it mocked up in there. Second problem is my problem. The bolts I got are too long, so I gotta run and go get new bolts. So I'll go get new bolts here shortly. I pretty much have everything laid out that's involved in this this mission, I guess you could say. So we're gonna have to run 2 separate steering shafts. So I got a 3/4 inch Heim joint here. So what we'll do with that, in case you don't know, when you have 2 steering shafts, I'm actually going to see if I can pop this up here real quick. So when you have 2 steering shafts, you got to support one. So you take the Heim joint, and this is a bad instance because that Heim joint, or that end of that shaft, is mocked up right now. Give me a second. So you can take the Heim joint, stick it over the double D shaft. Come on. All right, there we go. So this, now you can make a mount and bolt this somewhere on so that it will support the shaft. And in this instance, we're probably going to put it right around there-ish somewhere, because on this side, we have a double D shaft that'll go in there, and then we have our spline that'll go to the steering box. So now we have the bottom end of the steering column. And the reason we have to support this is because we have another one that's here, and this one we got to turn at an angle around the header and around the control arm, and then we're gonna have another shaft coming from here up to the steering column. And if we try doing this without support here, our steering is just gonna be flopping around all over the place. So this basically just supports and secures the steering shaft in the proper area. Then we'll get this one on here, angle it, and we got to make sure we're not going at too much of an angle for these. I think they run at about a 30-degree angle, but if we can keep it less than that, that's going to be beneficial for us all. So right now, we'll go ahead and go grab some new bolts and get this cut. There is the part number, in case anybody's wondering. STC 100 and Performance Online. I am not being sponsored by them at all. I'm just informing you because I've used this kit before and it was a little difficult to find it this time around. So for future, just in case you need it, there's the part number. All right, I'm gonna go grab some bolts. Well, I cheated in the meantime. I haven't gone and got bolts yet. What I did is I took and put a couple of nuts underneath the other nuts, and then I had the bolts that worked for now. So I had to tap it down a little bit and ended up, somehow I cut it too short, but I have it just protruding on the end there, if you can see that. So that's pretty much right where I want it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take it out. We're going to measure. We're going to do some math here, some maths. So we're going to take and put it on the steering column, steering shaft. Measure the length on here. Then we're going to subtract the length that this goes on here, like that. And then we're going to figure out how far to cut this shaft down so that this part is below here, because we didn't get no destructions with this. So we basically have to take and measure this amount here and get rid of all that. So that's okay. And to add the distance of this back in it. Yeah, we'll do maths. All right. So for all intensive purposes, my dial indicator is down in my basement right now, and I don't feel like going and getting it. So this has to be cut down. The inside shaft has to get cut down to a distance that it goes inside here, yet allows this to be at the end of our column. So how I'm going to figure this out is, let's see, I'm going to put this on the edge here. Hopefully you can see it. So on the edge of the table, out is just over 3 inches. Let's go 3 1/8. Okay. So we're just gonna write that down here real quick. 3 1/8. Okay, so that's, if we just wanted to butt weld this on there, we'd take out 3 1/8 off that other shaft and be done with it. Okay. But we're not going to do that because it's recessed in here, so we can stick that in. So if we take and measure inside, we're at 1 1/8 depth. So 1 1/8. That leaves us with 2 inches of difference. Okay. So from the edge of this bearing to the inside where that shaft is 2 inches. So that means we need to take 2 inches extra off of the shaft, off of this shaft. So from this point, we can take and mark that shaft so we know exactly where it is. So from that, it needs to go 2 inches down, and then that will allow us to put everything where it needs to be. And once we're ready for that, we can actually take and weld this sleeve in. This sleeve is a little loose in here. So it's not the greatest fit, but we'll make it work and deal with it. I don't know, as though the bearing would slide all the way in. Okay, so now that we're aware of that, if we wanted to, what we could do is we could take and drill holes and rosette weld it in, which might be a good idea. Maybe we'll clean this up and drill some holes and rosette weld it in place. But with as much room there, a couple of tacks on the end, rosette weld it, and then grind those tacks smooth so we can have a nice place for our bearing to sit on there. That'd be ideal too. So let's get into that and figure out what we're gonna do. Now this is marked right here, but I will clean the shaft off and actually mark it with a marker and cut her down. All right, so we got it mocked up here. Yeah, we're about 1/8 of an inch too deep, but you know what? That's okay. We can work with that. Not a big deal. So what we'll do, because we have room to come up that 1/8 inch and not worry about it, or we could trim this down a little bit and not worry about it, or we can just recess everything and not worry about it. It's not the end of the world. Not by any means. We got plenty of areas that we can work with, but being we're mocked up now, we know everything's gonna work. So we have our bearing. We can take and clean the shaft up a little bit better, just weld it on, let her be. We probably should try and mock up a little bit better so we can actually get this actually somewhat straight, even though we have adjustments and whatnot. But I think maybe that if we can try and get it a little bit straighter, that'd probably be a benefit for everybody involved. So let's see what we can do as far as that goes. Well, I think what I'll do is I'll get this in there. Get this tube in, weld it in, so that we can get get the collar on here and get it somewhat mocked up in place a little bit better, a little bit stiffer area. That way we can put it in, it's not going to fall out, and we can maneuver this where we want it and mark stuff, and hopefully they don't go out of whack when we take it apart to try and figure out where to weld it. Hopefully we'll figure it out. All right, so what I did is I took and I drilled 4 holes around the outside for a rosette weld. I'm going to take and I'm going to recess this in here just a little bit here. And what that's going to do is allow us to stitch along the edge here and then grind that smooth and hopefully be about where we need to be. So we're going to try that. We're going to put in a couple of rosette welds here. I'm not going to record me welding, and then I'll stitch around the outside here. Get this all taken care of. If I need to clean it up with the Dremel tool and a carbide bit, I'll do that, but that's where we're going. All right, so I put her back on the ground. That way I could compensate for the control arm and movement on that. That way it's at rest It's been a long time since this has been on the ground. Forgot how nice it actually sits. Hopefully by the end of the day today, we're gonna get this front end on, hopefully. But yeah, it's sitting pretty nice. Really, I probably should drop the front of that motor down a little bit, but it's where it's gonna live. We'll see how it runs and drives. If I need to, I can drop it a couple inches. Just be a little bit of a struggle. But actually, I probably won't even be able to drop it a couple inches because of the header clearance, but we'll figure that out later if we need to. I think it'll be just fine. Just fine. So what I got going on here is I got it mocked up. Obviously, column is not in. Column is still laying over there on the ground. Fine, great, dandy. The reason I wanted to do this is so I had a good rough idea of the position of the output shaft. So you can see this is on end, this one's flat. So the one that's going to come out of the column with the steering wheel straight is going to be flat. So like this, see, this one is straight up and down. This one would be flat, so I need to turn this like this, and now I could actually tack it on here, and I would be able to put the column together, get it in, and get placement figured out for all that, so I could cut the shaft cut the length. But I'm not too concerned about that overly right now. I'm actually, what I'm looking at is placement of the support here. So what my plan is probably bending a piece of this 2" by 1/8, putting it right about there, in that area there, and just get it set up on there and weld it in, and then put some extra gussets in. That way it's in place. I could just do it up and down like this, but the problem is there, it's too close to the control arm, and we could have hitting issues. Yeah, because it's going to be up like this. So somewhere in that area, I think is going to be the best. Yeah, so I think we'll worry about that right now, because I need to make sure I got header clearance, control arm clearance, and everything else. And that's about, realistically, the only place that I can put that support. So, yeah, I think we're just gonna go with it there. So I'll take, cut this down, notch it, and drill a hole. Actually, I'll probably drill a hole before I cut everything down. So I'll measure the length, slice across so I can get a bend in it, and get a hole drilled in here, and then make it halfway as pretty. Probably not a lot, but halfway as pretty. And get the frame cleaned up there and get it welded on. That way we have a support. All right, so we went ahead and got that bracket drilled. I took and drilled it out as far as I could with my regular drill bits, which was out to 5/8. Then I took a unit bit and drilled it out the rest of the way. So we have clearance here for the header. It's just tacked on there right now, so it's not, doesn't have any extra supports or anything. We'll probably throw an extra support on this side, brace it up, and we have clearance so that when we're on the suspension, it's not hitting, and it should line up fairly well, sorry, up here with the other column. So now that we know where this has to be roughly, and we can always adjust splines down here and move it if we need to, we're gonna go ahead and get this one placed right about there, and we're gonna go ahead and burn that in right now. All right, we have columnage. We have a column. It steers. Yeah, it might not be very good, but it'll work. I wish there was a kit that put a bearing up here on the top, but it wouldn't work very well because of the adapter you got to weld on the bottom. But now we got that in place. So what we're gonna do now is we need to put the shaft in between the two. That's where we're at, okay? So it should be fairly simple, right? Hopefully, it should be basic stuff here. Where, oh, I wanted my straight edge, but, oh, there it is. Found it. So we're just gonna try to do some simple stuff here. We're gonna measure from the flat on here to the flat on here in a somewhat basic straight line here. Okay, we're right there. We are at just under 6.5 inches. So we're gonna cut it at 6.5. That should leave us enough extra room. And just make sure we have some left to screw up, so we could do it again. So let's cut this at 6.5 inches and get it put in there and see how it fits. All right, so here we go. It's in, fits, everything is snugged up. So they have the extra Allens to go in here on the sides. Well, they're actually designed to be drilled all the way through. So I haven't put those in yet. And then these other locks, they're designed that you notch the shaft so that they can go in and lock in. And it's like that on all of the double D shaft. Even on the steering column, same situation. Am I gonna go all the way there? Probably with this one, yeah. And I gotta add a gusset down here yet. But if we close the door here, so you can see where I have to add a little bit of a gusset there, but it works, which is fantastic. That is perfect. And we have header clearance. Should be able to pull that header out. Even if we can't pull it out without pulling the steering, we can just pop this loose and move it. Not a big deal. Hopefully it'll be good. But it looks like all of our angles are pretty good. Nothing's extreme. And everything is working just like it should. All right, so I'm gonna button this up a little bit. Looks like I gotta go charge my camera, so I'm gonna button this up and go from there. All right, so we're gonna try and keep on moving today. Steering is all tied up here. All the bolts are through. The only one that's not through is the one in the steering column. I didn't feel like pulling that back out and drilling it out. So that's all done, taken care of, and mounted. Did it go ahead and add a gusset in, so that is taken care of as well. You can see that there. That's not that isn't tight, but it's there. That will actually allow us now to be able to set the front end on, which I had one of my kids help me before they left for work. Got it in the garage. So what we're gonna do is I took and I measured. If you look here, this bolts to the firewall on both sides. Right here where I got one screw left here, so I'll have to drill another, and the bottom one isn't very good. So what I did is I measured off of here, got a rough estimate of how far, sorry for the, roughly, you get the picture, how far I had to cut out, and guesstimating. So I went ahead and marked it out. If you can see there, I marked it out on that one. I'm probably gonna have to cut more on both of these. Marked out on that one. And the reason I said I might have to cut more is because I have a feeling that, well, this dives down, and if this and that going between the frame rail, which it should by measuring. The reality of having to cut out the bottom section here to drop it in is really, it's there. It's probably gonna happen. So I'll probably have to cut right up here on both sides to drop in the front end, more than likely. So almost wonder if I should just go ahead and do that right away. That way we got plenty of room. I know I have to cut out here for the steering box, so might as well just, I suppose, get stuff out of the way right away, right? Well, let's get started. All right, so went ahead and cleaned up my mess, and I chopped off the front frame horns. Those were hanging us up. I'm hoping that's all that was hanging us up, but I guess we'll find out. There's a possibility I might have to cut that whole bottom section of the core support out because of the sway bar here. So I guess we'll find that out here pretty quick. I'm gonna try again to get this thing up here. All right, so we got close on this side. We do have to go back a little bit yet. And what's happening is down here, we're getting caught up by the lower panel. And I was right, we are getting caught up on the sway bar. Excuse me, that's not the sway bar link, that's the steering ice idler. Sorry. And then this is actually going to hit the sway bar on the bottom. So I'm going to have to just take and cut all this across here and notch into this panel so that the frame, it can sit down on the frame. Like I said, this thing sits pretty low from what I'm seeing, and that's okay. That is definitely okay. So I'm gonna pull that back off, notch that out, and we're gonna try this again. There it is. It's not completely mounted yet. Obviously it's got a jack into the front of it yet. The back is just held up by vice grips. But there it is. I might have to go down a little bit more at the front. I gotta grab the hood and get that bolted on here and see where we're at. I did have to notch out the front of the frame more. Might have to move some stuff yet. Might have to notch that panel down there yet some more. Don't know how the radiator is going to fit yet. No idea. Don't even know if it's going to fit or if I'm going to have to find a different one. Outside of that, you know what? It's not looking half bad. And it looks like we lined up the center line of the wheel pretty darn good, so we must have got that frame pretty good. Perfect. So we got the hood and front bumper, but we got to put the hood on, see if we can get everything lined up, and then get this front end mounted, then worry about the front bumper. All right, check this thing out. Hood's on. We have a problem with the hood. I'm missing one bolt up here, and I got one bolt down here that's broken. So we'll get to that. Front end, the back, I got all the holes drilled, bolted on both sides. The front of the front end is not bolted on, attached. It's just sitting there. It's looking pretty good. Everything's lining up fairly well. There's spots here and there, you know. My body's not perfect, but what do you expect? You're not doing it off of just actually I think that just needs to be pushed back, and then this will line up just fine, no problem. As long as the hood doesn't flap, it's fine, no problem. But you know what, for the most part I think it'll be fine. I don't think we're gonna have any issues. Looks like I can just go ahead and mount the front end the rest of the way. Like I said, that one bolt, having that, or those 2 bolts missing, that is where the issue is. Get this thing set up here right now. I think the front end's in a good spot. So now I got to figure out how to attach the front of the front, if that makes any sense to anybody out there. I'm sure it does. But once I get the front of the front attached, then it's bumper mounts. And then that pretty much wraps up the body. It's just putting everything else together and tightening bolts and whatnot. A little bit of fabrication left, brake lines, stuff like that. Get the master in, wiring, lots of wiring. Swap out the transmission, etc., etc., etc. There's still stuff to do. There's a lot of stuff to do. But really, as quick as we're knocking this stuff out, it shouldn't take too long. So as soon as I get my dad's truck done out there, and I'll put this back in here. We might flip it around in here and drive it in instead. Well, not drive it, but push it in with the skid loader. Yeah. See if we can get anything else accomplished yet today. All right, I started to get some stuff out and decided to play a little. Haven't mounted the front end at all yet, but I pulled the radiator out because I wanted to see what kind of clearance I had. It does actually clear the hood. It will close with like that much clearance. I can move it up and down a little bit. If I move and bend the power steering line down there, it should work. I might be able to get a little bit more room out of it, get it down a little bit, and be a little bit happier. So that is a plus. Master cylinder. So I decided on this one I wanted to go with a firewall mount. Just easier to bleed brakes, easier all the way around. This is where it looks like the pedal likes to line up, so I went ahead, drilled 4 holes, well 5. You got the center hole where the rod comes through here, and the 4 outside mounting holes. So this kit I got off the eBay. It came with a double diaphragm master or booster. I opted for the nice master and the brake line and proportioning valve for disc drum, and then it came with everything, including the bracket for your pedal. This was actually a little bit longer. I cut it down. It came with support so that you can support your pedal, support your bracket for the pedal. Push rod, all the hardware you need, everything's here, including your brake pad, your brake pedal. So everything's here. I'm going to loosely finish bolting this up. I did make sure I had clearance for spark plug wires and whatnot, which is more clearance than some things, including 3rd gen Camaros. A lot more clearance in there than just a factory 3rd gen. So that's always a plus. I'm going to go ahead and get this bracket in, lightly bolted in, and just hoping it's the right position. It was really close to where it was for a factory pedal, so look at that. All right, so that position of that pedal, that ended up pretty nice where it is. This hole right here is where the factory one was, so I am only off roughly about 1 inch this direction, but the pedal's a little bit bigger, and this will actually allow us a better flow. Hopefully that should work for my wife. Should work for me too. That'd be nice, even if it's like way up here, but that's not gonna happen. Should have nice travel. If I need to move it, I can move it out just another notch, and we can work with it there. It should be fine. And then the gas pedal will fit right in there. Figure that out yet some point in time here soon, and keep on moving here. I think realistically right now it is about 4:30. Probably should figure out this front end and see about getting it mounted. Yeah, I know. Probably should. All right, let me see if I can figure something out. All right, so I did not get the front end mounted all the way yet. It's got the front to mount, but I did get started on a place to mount it. So the front bumper is actually on. Now it's sitting pretty nice. It's on pretty good. It could use a little bit of help, but it's there. So I can shine a little light on it. I got some welding to do yet on it. I took the old frame, the front of the old frame, and I cut that off, and I welded tubes, and then I put a piece of angle in there. So all that's there. Now, to mount the rest of this front end, what I'm gonna do, if I can put the light there, right from the point here, where the down supports come in for the radiator core support, I'm going to take from there and I'm going to go back to the 2x3 that goes across, and I'm going to put a support in there, and that should be theoretically enough to take care of the whole front end, because realistically all that the front ends were mounted is 2 bolts right here on the bottom of the core support. So why not try that? I know it's probably not the best thing to do, but front end is actually really solid on here. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. So we're going to do that, but not tonight anymore. So I'm going to call it a night. I got a big mess in here, but I don't even know if I'm going to clean that up yet tonight. So I appreciate you watching. Thank you very much. And have yourself a great day, and get out in that garage and do something. Have a good one.